All right, hello and welcome to the Vegan Luna podcast. This is Kevin Luna, and I'm here with a very, very special guest. The one thing I'm really excited today about is this is my first guest on my show, and I couldn't have asked for a better, more impactful person, especially in the country of Kuwait, where I am residing. And her name is Abir, and she has lived in Kuwait her whole life, so she knows the culture, she knows the mindset, and she knows pretty much everything about the people here. And she does a lot of amazing things with animals, with people. She's a humanitarian as well. And she works with kids with special needs. We're actually in the building where she works. She took time out of her busy schedule to sit down with me. She also has created the Kuwait Vegan Society, where she does a lot of work with helping animals. So she's just an all-around awesome person helping the planet, the people, and animals. So Abir, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here and to be interviewed by you. So my name is Abir. I am from Kuwait. I lived here most of my life. I studied abroad for a while in the States and in Canada. I studied psychology. My undergraduate was in psychology, and my postgraduate work was in psychology as well. My morning job basically is working for kids with special needs, and in the afternoon I am basically an animal rights advocate.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so funny. I was making an analogy the other day to someone, and I said I almost feel like Batman, where like I have my day job during the day, but then I fight for justice at night.
That's right.
So
That's right.
it's kind of
That's
funny.
right.
So you had said the U.S., right? So what part of the U.S. did you study in?
In Washington, D.C. I was there for about a year and a half, and then I moved to Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada to do my bachelor's degree there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool experience. I think it's always great for people to go abroad and whether it's study or whether it's learn or whether it's work, seeing other cultures really is very eye-opening. I'm sure the U.S. wasn't quite like the media portrays the U.S. when you actually got there.
Of course not.
And of course, vice versa for me coming to Kuwait from the U.S.
Yeah.
And so you said something interesting about psychology and how you studied the psychology. How would you say psychology helps you today when you work with people and when you work for helping animals as well?
Yes, it's very important to understand why people do the things that they do. It makes me more compassionate towards people. Making connections is not that easy, especially if, for example, if we're talking about the way we treat animals is something that most of us learn growing up. Most of us have traditions and cultures that I want to say make us eat animals. And so it helped me a lot be more kind and more compassionate towards people who haven't really made the connection yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. I love the way you say, why do people do what they do? Because there's always a reason why. It's so easy to just look at the surface value of someone and just say, oh, you're a bad person, oh, you're a good person, oh, you're this, you're that. And of course, like judging a book.
That's right.
Based on the cover.
That's right.
And when you dig a little bit deeper and ask some questions, you start to understand, where the thinking comes from. We like to assume a lot, and that isn't always the best method when you're dealing with people.
Yeah, agreed.
And so the biggest thing that I really want to learn and understand from you is what made you decide to go vegan?
Sure.
And what does that really mean to you?
Sure. So I've always loved animals all my life. I had pets all my life. Growing up, we always had in Kuwait, I'm sure you've noticed there are cats all over the place. So growing up, I always looked forward to coming back from school and playing with the outdoor cats that we had.
Oh, yeah.
I used to go to the zoo as well. Never felt so good going into the zoo, but I felt good being close to the animals, close to the chimps and close to the elephants.
Yeah, you almost feel bad a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Like
just a little bit.
Right
something
here.
is not right.
Yeah,
exactly.
like
Something
they
is.
don't look happy.
That's right.
They can't talk to me, but I feel
That's right.
this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And anybody can see that, animals don't look the same when they're in nature and when they're in the zoo. So even growing up, I could see that, but I couldn't really put my fingers on it. I liked going to the zoo, but it never really, again, never really made the connection. Until I was about in university. A friend of mine called me and he said that he went vegetarian. I said, "Oh, well, that's great. It's not a big deal." I've always had a cousin who was vegetarian and always made fun of her. Always made fun of her, gave her the hardest time.
Yeah,
because she
same.
was
I talk
vegetarian.
about that on my last video, on my last episode. I talk
Right.
about making fun of my vegetarian cousin.
Exactly. Okay. And then one day I was at, I'm not going to say the name, but at a junk food joint, and I was eating chicken nuggets. Loved chicken nuggets. I was eating a chicken nugget, and then something snapped, and I wasn't sure what it is. It made me feel quite awkward. I looked in, and it took me a second to realize that's an actual vein. So a chicken's vein, and it snapped like a rubber band. And so it put me off that junk food place. It didn't put me off chicken, it put me off that junk food place. And so, a month or two or three passed. And then slowly I started to make the connection of me having pets as cats, taking them to the veterinarian, taking care of them. And
You did this for work or
No.
for like just on the side?
what do you mean?
Going to the cat or taking care of the cats?
Oh, no. Those were my pets, actually.
Oh, okay.
So those were my pets. And so I felt strange having those cats, feeding them every day, taking care of them, making sure they're okay. If they're sick, I take them to the vet. And then what am I actually eating every day? I don't know if that makes sense. Just made that connection of
Yeah.
what's the difference between all those animals. And then around that time, I decided to go vegetarian. Also, still haven't heard of the word vegan. It was still vegetarian, so I was still eating cheese and drinking milk and butter. So that was kind of easy too. I think being vegetarian is not that hard.
At about what time was this, would you say? Like what year or so?
This was the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
Actually,
Wow,
so
2000.
June of 2000, around June 2000. And then about a couple of years after that, on a rainy day, I stumbled on a brochure on the floor, and it said, "Why vegan?" I opened the brochure, started reading it, and at that very moment turned vegan, because I never knew what they were doing to the cows. I never knew what they were doing to the chickens for us to get the eggs. Because usually it's conveyed in a very rosy way. The cows are happy to give us the milks, the milk.
Yeah, happy cows, the happiest cows apparently live in
That's it.
California.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And same thing with the chickens. They live outdoors. Everything is done very, very organically. And then when I learned the truth, I didn't really want to be part of it. And so I basically became vegan overnight. Vegetarian wasn't overnight. It took me a while to go vegetarian. So I had a vegetarian cousin, and then a very good friend of mine told me he went vegetarian. And then that chicken nugget incident happened, and then I made that connection between my pets and then other animals. And then I stumbled into that why vegan brochure and went vegan overnight.
Yeah, so there's two things on that story that's interesting. One is the magazine. So you found this on the floor?
On the floor on a rainy day, yes.
Oh my gosh, on
Yeah.
a rainy day, so it's already wet
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
kind of like soggy or whatever.
Absolutely, yes.
And
yes.
like maybe the words are hard to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could
Yeah.
just see pictures of animals, and I just picked it up and just was horrified at all this information that most of us have no idea about. And that's what makes me more compassionate towards other people. What happens to the animals is usually done behind closed doors. Very few people are open about what happens or what they do with animals, whether it's animal experimentation, whether it's how they're raised. Even in the zoos or circuses, when you go into the circus, you see the animal is fine, but behind doors, they're starving them, they're beating them. So what people see is not what really is happening to the animals. And so yeah, that made me make the decision right there and then.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is interesting is how it's a series of events that kind of add up. And
Yeah.
I always say that every person, I believe, or in my belief, is born vegan. Every single person. And so you're born 100% vegan. If you're drinking your mother's breast milk, that's perfectly natural. That's vegan. That's
Right.
the only milk you should be drinking. And then somewhere along the lines, you're introduced to some animal products, and then maybe you become 0% vegan at
Right.
some point. Now, maybe you're learning and you're living in this world and you're closed-minded to what's going on, but then you hear about someone going vegetarian and it kind of opens your mind a little bit more, and maybe that adds 10%, right?
That's right.
And then maybe you're going and you're eating at a food establishment and you find a vein that kind of like, that's a vein and an animal, I don't know, like that, and then it adds another 25%.
That's right.
Right? And then maybe maybe a few other things happen down the line, and you're at 95% vegan, right? Making that connection and making that what it is a connection.
Yeah.
And then you see the magazine on the floor, and then that's that 5% that you need, and you're like, I'm vegan now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. I think some people go into, whether it's advocating for animals or conversations or just dealing with social challenges, and they think, I need to turn this person vegan, or I need to change them, or whatever. The reality is you can't change anybody.
That's right.
Nobody can make anyone do anything that they don't want to do, that when they're ready. All you can do is share your knowledge, share your experiences, share your stories, and maybe debunk a few myths, that they believe in, and that's it. Maybe you add 5% vegan equity to their journey.
Yeah.
And I think that is very, very interesting, and we all can think back and maybe have similar stories.
Yeah.
There's something else that you said that was really interesting, and I think a lot of people don't know. Can you just briefly share what are some things that are hidden from us about the food industry? And I know you could talk for a long time about this, but just some key things that you say are really that you really want people to know, that most people don't know about the food they commonly eat.
Right.
In the meat, dairy, and egg industry.
The number one thing that people or myth that people always talk about is that cows make extra milk. And so it's okay for us to have some of the milk, that some of the milk can go for the baby, and then we can have the rest. Cows are like us, human females. So we make as much milk as the baby actually needs. And what happens in the dairy industry is they take from 3 hours to 24 hours, and then they take the calf away from its mother so that we can have the milk. They give the baby cow or the baby calf artificial food or artificial milk, and then we get the rest. So that's something I think people need to know, because people feel okay with getting the milk because they say, well, the little cow already had their milk. This is extra milk that we're getting. And here in Kuwait, that is said about cow's milk, and that is said about goat's milk, because we have also here, we have goat's milk as well. And the same thing goes with chickens here in Kuwait. If you go to any chicken place, if you see the way that the chickens are raised, it's especially for chickens. And I would like everybody to know that the chickens are the number one animal that's that goes through the most cruelty, because it's a small animal. You don't really hear their screams. They're very how do you say, they're not a violent animal. They're not a big animal. They're easily crowded next to each other. And so if you just tell a person, just go to these places and see it, it actually clicks. A lot of people don't go and buy their own chickens here. Everybody just goes to the supermarket and they just buy the frozen kind. Most people buy the frozen meat and the frozen chickens. If they actually went and saw where their meat came from, and especially chickens in Kuwait, because chickens, if you go to any market, you will actually see live chickens. If anybody would go and see how the chickens are living, that would actually make them think twice about actually eating chicken. So these two things I'd like to concentrate on: where the cow's milk come from, and to go and actually see where the chicken comes from.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The next thing I really want to know is part of my journey and my evolution myself is learning some of the best ways to advocate for animals, to make change, to help their lives be free from suffering, free from cruelty. And there's so many ways to go about it. I'm a firm believer that there isn't one way that works, and there isn't one only way, and there isn't the right way, and there isn't the wrong way. There's some people that view people as more extreme. Like, did you hear about what happened in Australia recently, where they shut down Melbourne City, and they had the vegan advocates blocking the streets, and asking people to watch the documentary Dominion, which, if you haven't seen, is very powerful. It shares everything and more about the industry that's hidden from us, and they basically wanted people to see what's happening. That's it. It's just watch what's happening. You make your own decision. And in 2 days, that documentary got viewed over 60,000 times.
Oh, wow.
But some people said that was very extreme, right? And that was a very extreme approach, but there was no violence. No one was getting hurt. And it was, if you look at the end result, it was very effective. People all across the world were talking about it. And it made a massive change. And people watching a documentary like that will make, at least they're learning and educating. So there's other ways, right? So what I want to ask you really is, what are some of the other ways that maybe in your experience that you've done yourself, or that you've heard of, that people could do if they're like, you know what, I believe in this message, I believe in going vegan, I believe in helping animals, I just don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. What do you say for those people?
The first thing is to be a good example yourself. Okay, that's the first thing. I think a lot of the people were affected around me. They just saw how I was. A lot of them, they said, oh, that I'm not going to last being vegan, or that it was really hard. Or they would watch the food that I eat, and they would say, oh no, it's not delicious, and then they try a little bit and then they like it. So the first thing is to be a good example yourself. The second thing is to use social media. It's very important to use social media. It's very effective to use social media, especially as individuals. So whether to use Instagram or Facebook, very easily anybody can make a post. So people can use social media. Which is very effective. I think that's I don't want to say that's the number one thing that actually made veganism go mainstream, but it kind of is, whether it's using Instagram, whether it's using Facebook. People can have get-togethers with their friends, and they can watch documentaries together. People can have get-togethers and have little potlucks and make people try vegan food, and so they would know what vegan food tastes like, and that it tastes good. And a lot of times, even when you give a lecture to people, even when people watch documentaries, the first thing is, okay, so now what do we eat? So it's very important for the person or the organization that's trying to be, that's advocating for the animals, is to always have recipes at hand, to always have free food at hand if they can, because that's always the people's question is, okay, so now we've seen this, what do we do? What kind of food do we eat? So we try to make it easy for them to cook, easy for them to give them easy vegan recipes. So basically just to be active, like I said, to bring your friends around, show them documentaries. If you're in high school or in college, you can ask your teacher or professor if you can give a little lecture about veganism. Basically that's it.
Thank you so much. I think that's really interesting. I personally believe in everything you said about the social media as well. It's if you talk about what it does, it's a social construct, right? And people, everyone's eyes are there. I mean, if you watch anyone on their phone, I mean, 99% of their time is spent on social media. So if you can get effective messages there, and you can communicate through people there, it really is so powerful. And I think when you look back at, you know, every single social justice movement that we've ever had in human history, anything from in the U.S., you know, from having slavery and working towards abolishing that, to women's rights, to all kinds of different other social justice issues in the past, they never had social media.
Right.
And
that's right.
And imagine if they did, like it would have ended. It wouldn't have taken 300 years to end,
absolutely.
or that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
And this movement is growing so incredibly fast. It's amazing. What sort of things in Kuwait really inspire you that you've seen happening here that speak to hope, that speak to positive change for people, the planet, and for animals?
In Kuwait, just like in a lot of other countries in the world now, veganism is become very trendy, and I love that, you know. But I do believe that it's not a trend. I think veganism is here to stay. I think veganism is going mainstream. We do a lot of exhibitions as the Kuwait Vegan Society and a lot of tabling, and more I get people that are more familiar with the term veganism. I get a lot more people saying, oh, I've tried it for a month and it didn't work. What's your advice? Or once we did the 11-day vegan challenge, and we got a lot of people interested in that. More and more people care about their own health. More and more people care about the environment and what food production does to the environment. And of course, more and more people are making the connection that animals feel just like we do. So me personally, I see a change in Kuwait from the amount of people that come to me while tabling to say, you know, we've seen you before, I've read this brochure before, I've tried veganism before, or my cousin now is vegan, or my sister talked to me about veganism. So it's a buzzword, it's a trend, and I truly think it's here to stay in Kuwait. And also one other thing, there are more and more strictly plant-based restaurants that are popping up in Kuwait, left and right actually, and a lot of restaurants now have clearly marked vegan items, and so it's a lot more easier now for people to go vegan in Kuwait and not have to you know, struggle to go out to eat or go to the supermarket and find, you know, vegan items.
Yeah, I found the same thing when I came here. I was very surprised. I honestly thought I would never see a vegan, or I never thought I would find food to eat that was in a restaurant, of course, besides making my own food. And I was very pleasantly surprised to really see that here in a country like Kuwait that is really trending towards one of the most obese countries in the world, and the amount of meat and cheese and eggs that is eaten on a typical Kuwaiti diet is getting up there with the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's changing.
Yeah, and
it's definitely changing. Yeah.
And so it's very good to see these changes, and I'm excited to see for sure what's going to happen in the future. And you said something interesting about how people start to communicate with others about what they see and what they hear, and it's always interesting because it's kind of like the psychology part where they share how they feel, you know, and it's always different than like what they were told. Like you might have a tabling event and it might have a certain amount of impact because they read and there's some facts, but then you might have another event where they get some food and they taste the food, and that might have a different kind of impact, and the way they feel and how they share that is going to be very different, right? And how they make the other person feel. I'm a big believer that food is one of the most powerful things that we have, and I like that you say about the recipes. What do I do next? That's so common.
Very important. Very important.
Even in my experience, you know, some of the ones that made the biggest changes were with the food once they got a chance to taste it.
That's it.
And so, what would you say is something that people think maybe isn't effective in helping animals, and maybe something that is effective, or maybe something that isn't, the people think isn't effective, but maybe it is. maybe they're not looking at it the right way?
Um, okay, let's start with something that might not be as effective as people think it is.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that's my own opinion, but I've formulated it because I could see the reaction of a lot of people when that happens, is when people basically demand that others become vegan overnight, that people demand that others make the connection. A lot of vegans, once they turn vegan, and I don't blame them, it's their passion, it's the images that they've seen of the animals, and it's the sense of urgency that they feel and the sense of sadness that they feel that makes them go a bit extreme. And they want to help the animals right away, and they can't believe that the world is so cruel, But really, I believe that works with a very minute population. It doesn't work with the masses. I think what works is being kind. I think what works is being compassionate. I think what works is remembering that you weren't vegan all your life. I remember myself, it took me 2 years to become vegan, me knowing what happens to the animals, me seeing the vein, me having a vegetarian cousin, me having a vegetarian friend, all those flags around me, and I still didn't go vegan. It's not, people think it's easy, you can do it overnight. People don't, a lot of vegans don't agree with me. No, it's not that easy. It's easy once you realize it. It's easy when you make the connection, and most vegans say, I wish I was vegan earlier. I wish I had made the connection earlier. But it does take that time. It does take you being kind and compassionate towards others. And I think that us being defensive against non-vegans makes them take even longer for them to make the connection, makes the gap between us and them a lot larger than it already is. And we need to be part of the community. We need to be part of everybody. We don't need to be, us against them. That's not how it is, because like you said, veganism is a social justice movement. It's not a fad. It's not a diet. It's not it's something very real, and we need to be careful with how we actually try to introduce it to other people, and not be defensive about it, and not be unkind to others just because they haven't made the connection like we did.
Yeah, I think that we're on the same page there. I'm still learning my journey. I mean, you've been vegan for how long now?
A little over 16 years now.
16 years.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a little over 1 year.
Yes.
So I'm still new. I'm still finding my footing in my journey. And I've learned so much from you.
Yeah, thank you.
And everything that you do. I mean, our conversations that we have in the past have been always amazing. I always learn something new.
Thank you, Kevin.
And I think that's what it's all about. It's always constantly learning, and I always challenge people to just do some of the research, do some of the learning. If you only listen to what marketing tells you, what culture tells you, what tradition tells you, what your taste buds tell you, if those are the only things you're listening to, you're missing a lot of parts. You're missing some of the logic, some of the facts, some of the science, some of the studies. There's a lot of things that you're not being told. And so I always challenge people to at least look into it and do a little bit more research and try to find their own conclusion and look at the other side of the coin.
That's right. Yeah.
And when you do that, at least you're making an informed decision. If you do the research and you say, you know what, I've done all the research and I still decide to pay for someone to take an animal's life unnecessarily, at least you're making an informed decision.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost rather have that than making an ignorant decision that you just don't know.
Right.
And so I like to say that. I want to thank you so much for your time. I have one last question.
Sure.
What would you say is one takeaway from this conversation that you really want the audience to have and never forget?
Okay. I don't know if we've touched on this in the interview, but I believe that every single one of us can make a difference. Every single one of us. And I think a lot of us don't believe that, and especially, you always hear, oh, you think you're one person, you think you're going to save the animals, or you think you're going to save the environment. And the answer is absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
One person can definitely make a difference. I can talk to the next person can talk to the person next to them. We can all make a difference, whether it's in the lives of animals, whether it's in the lives of humans, whether it's in, saving trees. Every single one of us can do an act of kindness every single day. And I think a lot of people need to have more faith in themselves, and we all need to work together to make this world a better place for the next generation.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me have this conversation with you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for everything you do for the animals, for people, and for this planet. The world's a better place because of you.
Likewise. Thank you.